If they had told me then what it would all lead to, I would have just turned off the camera. I wouldn't joke on the stream, I wouldn't set a timer, I wouldn't search for these channels, and I wouldn't write to these people. But then, 2 years ago, it seemed to me that I had found a real golden key. An idea that you can't break away from. Make a collaboration with other YouTube horror storytellers. Ask them what's really keeping them awake. And let everyone tell their own story. The idea was simple. I ran a channel with voiceover of scary stories, an ordinary, unremarkable channel. I wrote a little myself, translated American horror films, and created an atmosphere. There was steady growth, but the views were stagnant. The audience wanted something really creepy, and it seemed to me that reality was just the thing that could scare more than fictional monsters. I sent messages to 7 authors. Not everyone was famous, some were newbies, but there was something personal about their voice and lyrics. Something they really held on to. Not as a material, but as a memory. One of them immediately refused. The other replied a couple of days later, "I can't share it. This is not a story. That's what I live with." The others agreed. Reluctantly, they agreed. There was only one condition: we don't voice each other. Everyone sends their own story, recorded by themselves, without editing. Without music. I'm just putting together an issue, doing an introduction, publishing. Everything looked safe, even if a little gloomy. The first story came 2 days later. The author is a woman named Lana, a channel with thousands of subscribers. In the video, she calmly and confidently told how she was being stalked by a subscriber. He found it by geolocation in a photo, calculated the address from reflections in mirrors and windows. He wrote messages with phrases that she never uttered in the frame, only off the record. Once she saw him behind the car at the entrance. The second time was in the parking lot of a supermarket. She moved out. After changing her place of residence, job, nickname, and avatar, she disappeared for a year. But a year later, he sent a photo of the new window with its reflection. The story was short, but dead accurate. No sounds, no editing. Only the voice, breaking, but not screaming. I added it to the issue first. Just as an introduction to a big project. A week later, the second story. The author is a young guy from Minnesota. By his accent, I was still trying to recognize everything back then. He told me how he worked as a food delivery guy in the summer, and one day he delivered an order to an address that wasn't on the map. The house looked abandoned, but there was a light on in the window. When he returned to the car to leave, he realized that his back seat was wet. Not from the rain. From the blood. I turned on the flashlight, but nothing happened. 3 minutes later, the car wouldn't start anymore. He told the rest hesitantly, laughing nervously, as if he still hadn't figured out what had happened. The third story changed everything. It was sent by the author under the nickname Nox89. No name, no face, just a login and a minimalistic video channel with a dark screen and only a voice. He had a fan base, and at the same time, he hadn't seen a single collaboration video before. His audio came in at night. No introductions. Just a file with a note, publish without changes. Don't delete anything. Don't ask me anymore. I included it in a composite video. The story was not the same as the others. It was not designed into a structure. He told me how he worked as a moderator on a small forum. There was a user who wrote under different nicknames, but with the same style, as if each message partially repeated the previous one, but only for a few words. It was as if the person was actually experiencing the events that he then described, and each new message is a new stage of something that was coming. Everything sounded dry and even boring. Until one moment. Knox said. I started copying his posts and pasting them into the search. One of them coincided with a police complaint in another state. The second one is with a missing person request. Third, I saw the third one in my house. It was written on my wall, with a marker pen, word for word. The pause in his story lasted 9 seconds. I checked, it wasn't a mistake. It was silence. Then he said, "This is not a story. This is a warning. Has anyone else seen this?" After the publication of this video, my channel stopped being ordinary. At first, everything was fine, thousands of views, new subscribers, even positive reviews. But then they started writing to me. Not fans. Other authors. Those who have heard Knox and claimed that they too have come across something similar. One of them received a printout of his old script, underlined with a red pen. Another found a USB flash drive in his car, which had only one file on it, a video recording with his voice, but not spoken by him. And then Knox itself disappeared. His channel has been deleted. His letters stopped coming. There's only one entry left that I still haven't dared to delete. After that, everything began to crumble. I started receiving emails with excerpts of my own videos, but translated into other languages. Someone put a piece of paper under the windshield wiper of my car, with my nickname crossed out in black marker. At first I thought it was a coincidence. Or someone's stupid prank. Well, who else besides me would know in which cafe I mount videos, at which table I sit, and that my headphones are always black with a crack on the left side. But the next time I went there and saw a note on the table saying, "Change headphones," I felt something slowly sinking in my stomach. Not fear, no. Don't panic. And the strange, cold conviction that someone is nearby. Not in the sense of around the corner, but physically, literally, here. Someone saw where I was sitting. Someone was waiting for me to leave. Someone left this note, and they knew I'd be back. After that incident, I began to leave the house less often. I mounted it more often at night. I moved the streams to weekdays so as not to attract a lot of attention. I haven't done any new collaborations. I didn't ask other YouTubers about creepy stories. I even deleted the mailbox from which I once wrote to that guy, Knox89. It was as if he wanted to cut off that piece of his canal, cut it out like a malignant tumor. But everything has already grown too deep. The strangest part started later. I began to notice letters in the mail that I didn't remember. Drafts. Dropped links. Names that seemed familiar to me. One of the letters was addressed to a girl, Taylor, with whom I definitely did not communicate. But the letter was framed in my style. Even the caption is the same, "Stay spooky, Max." I don't remember writing this. But he couldn't prove that he hadn't written either. The handwriting is too similar. The wording is mine. I became paranoid. I changed passwords, reinstalled the system, disabled two-factor, then turned it back on. I looked at my keyboard and imagined someone else typing with my fingers. One day, when I was editing an evening video, I heard the door in the hallway open, without a click, without a creak. I froze. I turned my head, but nothing happened. I checked the lock. Closed. But on the floor, by the mat, someone left a USB flash drive. Without a signature. Without a case. Just a naked filling. I inserted it into an old laptop that had no internet connection. There were 4 files on the flash drive. One of them was called by my nickname. The rest are just dates. The first file is my voice. I was reading a text that I didn't remember. It's not a story, it's not a script, it's like an excuse. It was like I was explaining myself to someone. The second file is a screenshot of my YouTube channel, but with a different number of videos. There were more. A lot more. Even the previews were foreign. In one, I was standing at the blackboard, in the other, I was holding a microphone, which I had never owned. The third file is an image from the camera. I was sitting at the table, in the same sweatshirt as now. Only, the lighting was different. And the screen reflected a figure that wasn't there. No, not a figure in that sense. It was a man. But not me. Someone was just standing behind. His face was blurry, as if it was just me in focus. But he was looking at me. Without threat. No gestures. He just stood there. The fourth file was empty. I haven't slept in 2 days. I didn't eat. I just sat in front of the screen and watched old videos. I opened each one in turn, looking for reflections, noises, any traces that I hadn't noticed before. In one of them, where I was reading a story about a night stalker, I suddenly heard a cough. Quiet, barely perceptible, as if behind a microphone. I did an enhancement, ran it through the editor. It wasn't my voice. Not my breathing rhythm. Someone nearby sneezed. After that, I closed the channel. Completely. Without an announcement. Without saying goodbye. I just deleted everything. I couldn't stand it. Moved. I left the equipment. I bought another laptop. I haven't logged into YouTube for 6 months. Only then, after a while, out of pure curiosity, I opened the search. Just to check if there's anyone left who I've collaborated with. Lana is missing. The channel has been deleted. Not a single mention in the cache. The guy from Minnesota, too. But on his old Reddit account, someone posted links to strange sites. On one of them, in an archive with zip files, there was an entry where he said that he had started having dreams. The same ones he described in his story. And then I saw it. A new channel. With my nickname. With the same logo. With the same voice. Only I didn't create it. He published stories, my stories. With my voice. But I've never written them down. One of them was about a man who created a channel about terrible collaborations. He collected stories from other authors, and then began to lose the boundary between his own voice and others. In the end, he disappeared. He just stopped responding. And his channel continued to publish new videos. By myself. I watched this video while sitting in a completely different apartment, in a different city. From a laptop that I've never logged into my YouTube account on. And I heard myself saying the address of this apartment in the video. With the intonation that I use only on streams. With pauses between words. With that tense intake of breath before the phrase. I turned off the laptop. Get up. He went to the window. And suddenly I realized that there was a piece of paper on the kitchen table. White. And there's an inscription on it with a marker. I didn't touch the paper. I just looked at it as if it wasn't an inscription, but someone alive. It was slightly crumpled, as if someone was in a hurry, tearing a sheet from a notebook, leaving thin traces of a spiral. The handwriting is uneven, as if it was written standing up or even on the weight. But the scariest thing is that I recognized him. There was this handwriting, mine. Exactly the same way I used to sign boxes with appliances when I was going to my first rented apartment. I moved away. I gave myself time. I just stood at the window for 5 minutes, listening to the street noise, the voices of passers-by, and cars driving. Everything was as it always was, the city was alive. But in this apartment, at this point in space, it's like the air has become denser. I wasn't panicking. I just felt like I'd gone too far. It was as if he had let something into his life not through a door, but through a microphone, a lens, a text, through other people's voices that he recorded. I went into the bedroom, collected my laptop, wires, and charger. I put everything about YouTube in my backpack. I decided to leave, no matter where. Just to the train station, on the first bus you see. While I was packing, my phone vibrated in my pocket. At first I didn't want to watch. But then I looked at the notification from YouTube. A new video on a channel that I didn't create. The end of the first story. Then there's the real thing. I pressed it. The video opened immediately, without downloading. It was filmed on a hidden camera. The picture is not too clear, but I recognized the location instantly. It was the entrance to my front door. I was walking towards the door. In the same jeans, the same jacket, with the same backpack that I just packed. Filmed from a car, most likely. I'm in the video. Located there, on the street. Although I was in the apartment the whole time. I didn't watch it until the end. He grabbed the keys, closed the door and ran out. Outside. Without thoughts. Only movement. He turned the corner and stopped right there. There was a guy standing on the other side of the street. The same one as in the video. Me. Only, a little older? Or tired looking. I blinked and he disappeared into the stream of passers-by. I didn't pursue. I just moved on, as if I were running away not from someone, but from the very fact that this could be happening. That someone could so accurately reproduce my gait, my movements, before I even went outside. I bought a ticket for the next flight at the bus station. It doesn't matter where. I just needed to disappear for a while, stay out of touch, without a network. I pulled out the SIM card, broke it in half, and threw it away. Put the phone in the trash. On the way to the bus, I looked out the window. The night had already deepened, and the reflection in the glass seemed to divide me in half. On the one hand, I am. On the other hand, there is a shadow of me, as if repeating my facial expressions with a delay. But I didn't allow myself to panic. I started thinking. For the first time in all this time, coolly, to the point. Whoever it was knew everything about my channel. He knew my habits. My stylistic techniques. The approach to installation. So, either someone has been watching for a long time, or someone from the inside. Maybe someone I used to work with. A colleague? The editor? Someone I trusted with drafts and demos. And then I remembered. One of the editors I did early projects with is a guy named Jules. We didn't talk for long. But he often asked me for raw materials for style analysis. Then I was flattered that someone wanted to learn from me. I sent him everything, right down to my personal video diaries, which I did not publish. I couldn't contact him anymore. His accounts disappeared from the network last year. I didn't think much of it at the time, I just dropped everything. But now, everything has fallen into place. Maybe it's not him. But it all started with him. I got off at a random stop. A small town. No cameras, no crowds. I took a room in a cheap hotel, paid in cash. I locked myself in, sat on the bed and took out my laptop. Turned on, without Wi-Fi. I opened the local editor and started writing. Everything that happened. With dates, details, places. I wanted to record everything. Not for publication. For myself. So that there's at least something left if I suddenly disappear. I wrote until morning. And then, under the morning light, I couldn't stand it. I connected to Wi-Fi via VPN. I went to YouTube. The channel that I hosted has been updated. New video. Is it you who's trying to escape? Preview screenshot. My hotel room. Taken through a peephole. I turned abruptly to the door. Get up. He came over. No one. Only in the crack under the door is the same crumpled piece of paper. I picked up the paper, holding it with 2 fingers, as if it could determine whether it would burn in my hands or disappear on its own. The paper was slightly damp, as if it had just been taken out of his pocket. The handwriting is the same as before. But the meaning was foreign. It was a requirement. Order. I no longer felt threatened, but rather tired, deep, soaked into my bones. It was as if all this was not a struggle, but a continuation of what I once started myself. It's just that once, when I was passionate about shots, sounds, and stories, I went too far. And now everything is back, but not as punishment, but as a mirror. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall in front of me for a long time, where the sun's rays were already breaking through the curtains. And suddenly I felt something simple and clear, not fear, not irritation. And freedom. Everything that was happening no longer had any power over me if I stopped playing by those rules. I took the camera, an old one, lost among the equipment with which I started my journey on YouTube. I sat down in front of the window and turned on the recording. No lights, no script, no editing. I was just saying it on my own. Not for subscribers. Not for the audience. And for a man who has long been lost in all this pursuit, for himself. Hello. I do not know who will see it. Maybe no one. But if you can hear it, then I've finally managed to find the silence inside all this noise. I'm sorry that I forgot why I started all this. Not for the sake of watching, not for the sake of fear. For the sake of the people. Stories. The real ones. I clicked save. I did not publish it. I just saved it. For the first time in a long time, I felt light. Not because it's over, but because I stopped running. It's been a few weeks. I stayed in the city, rented a small room above a bookstore. The owner, an elderly man with a perpetually hoarse voice, did not ask any questions. He didn't care who I was. I helped him sort books, had tea on the stairs, and talked about everything except the internet. Sometimes I turned on my laptop. But not for installation. I was just writing, my thoughts, what I noticed around me. Some kid was selling flowers at the entrance, and one day I bought an armful of sunflowers from him. I don't know why, just because it was alive. Present. I took them home and put them in a coffee can. And every time I looked at them, I felt like I was back. And then one day, while I was leafing through old notes, I received an email. Real, paper. An envelope without a return address. Inside was a small sheet and just one sentence. I saw your video. Thank you for reminding me how important it is not to be afraid to be yourself. The signature is Ellie. I remembered her. She once left a comment under one of my earliest stories. Then she wrote that her brother listens to my videos on headphones before going to bed because my voice calms him down. We corresponded a little bit, and I knew they were having a hard time at the time. Then the connection was cut off. And here is the letter. Warm, simple, unexpected, like a ray of sunlight through clouds. I took out paper and a pen. I answered her. Without pathos. Just the way I know how. She arrived a few days later. Without warning. She just walked into the bookstore while I was arranging the volumes alphabetically. I recognized her immediately by her eyes. She stood there, a little embarrassed, with a backpack on her back, and smiled as if we had known each other for 1,000 years. Hi, she said. I thought you wouldn't mind if I disappeared from here for a bit, too. Together with you. And I wasn't. We walked through the streets, talking about everything and nothing. She told me how hard it was in her family, how often it seemed to her that no one needed her. And then one day she turned on my video, and for the first time in a long time she felt that someone was just talking to her. That night we sat on the roof for a long time. I watched her, the way the wind played with her hair, the way she laughed at her own jokes. And I realized, that's what it was all about. Not for fear. Not for the sake of views. And in order to someday, at the most remote point of the path, meet a man who was also looking for the light. We didn't talk about the video anymore. About oddities, recordings, threats. It's all been left behind. We lived, breathed, walked, drank wine, argued about books, listened to music from records. Every day was filled with something real. Simple. Warm. One day she said, "You don't look tired anymore. You have peace now." I nodded. Because I realized that fear doesn't go away when the threat disappears. And when someone shows up, you don't have to hide next to them. And at that moment, for the first time in a long time, I really didn't care what anyone was watching. Because finally, someone was just there. And that was enough.